Okay, so to understand why the bracha for Ratzta, which is boundless, is bound dafke to Yaakov, with whom Shmira Shabbos B'derech Prat is associated. To understand that, so first you still have to be makdim that in Shabbos there's two inyanim. Sorry, not two inyanim, three inyanim. There's Friday night, there's Shabbos day, and there's Shabbos day itself. There's the two sudas. There's the tefillah and the suda of Raivin the Raivin. And then he begins to explain the tefillah, ata echad. So let's just briefly look at it. Again, it's instructive, it'll be helpful to have it in front of us. As he summarized and said, that what's the inyan? Ata echad, it seems to repeat itself in its praise of Shabbos, its serenity, and so on. As we will see, it's not. But he gives us the outline of the way the tefillah is arranged. And that is that it mentions the inyan of Chagas on 4 levels. So let's just refresh our memory. So that's one darge. He explained that Ata, which is Gilu, is Chesed. Shimcha Gvura is explained at length. He gave us a few asbeirim. Why Shimcha is associated with Gvura? It's for the Zulas and it's a Ha'ara. And Yidden Tiferes. The Rishi says, Yisol Asher Bach Espoir. Espoir, I take pride, Oisis Tiferes. Then he goes on to say, Tiferes Gedula Vateres Yeshua Yeh Melucha Kedusha La'amcha Nasata. Here again, Gedula is Chesed, Yeshua is Gevura. You need Yeshua when there's a threat, when there's a menaged. And Yeh Melucha Kedusha, that's Tiferes. What did he say? The Yeh Melucha Kedusha is Tiferes, because that's Shalom, and Shalom is all about Tiferes, making peace between contrasting or even opposing realities. And then, of course, level 3, Avraham, Yaakov, Yitzchak, Yitzchak, Yeranin, Yaakov, Vanavinuchavai. Here again, Chesed, Gevura, Tiferes. Finally, Menuchas Av and Adava is obviously Chesed. Menuchas Embes Ve'emunah. Now, what's the shaykhs between that and Gevura? Says because when you need Emunah, when the kus is behelim, the kus is revealed, you don't need emunah. In the simple pshat level of emunah. Hence, it's a result of gevura. Menucha sholem hashkid v'vetach, again, tiferes. The shaila was, what is added by menucha shleima shata reitzah. Okay, that's a summary, not a summary, it's an outline of the 4 dargis, the 4 chalokim. In each one, where identifies Chagas, Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes. To understand this, now, Ois Dalet. V'hinei Gival HaKav in Chagas, Shenimnu Kan Dalet Pamim. So it's obviously it's not the repetition, but rather in Dalet Madreges. It's 4 levels in Achlokim, B'chlolos Lebeis Madreges. In general, 4 category. 2, and then it breaks down into 4. And what are the 2 general darges? They are Kefisha Gimel HaKav Hem Koydem HaTzimtzum. The way there is the inyan of Chagas before the Tzimtzum, Ukafishem Lachar HaTzimtzum. And then there is the way it is, Lachar HaTzimtzum, as he'll explain, presumably at length. So let's begin. So Ata Echod, and so on. This is all describing the inyan of Chagas Chesed Gvur Tiferes Lifnei HaTzimtzum. What's the matzav? The Kedem HaTzimtzum Hayirin Sof Mamalis Kol HaMetzius Lashon V'etz Chaim. Before the Tzimtzum, so the Hayirin Sof filled all Metzius. Now, obviously, the fact that he talks about Metzius means there's already in the Hayirin Sof, and this is already an articulation. The fact that it's Hayir is already a Gilui. As he pointed out, the whole notion of Gilui, even Hayirin Sof, which on the one hand cannot be apprehended by anything. On the other hand, the fact that it's Hayir is already implicit, the potential, at least from a Kabbalah. If you say revelation, so you're already talking being revealed somewhere. So that somewhere is already Metzius. So it's not the pshat that how is it Ein Sof as a Malakah? It's called this is not Metzius. The answer is there is. The fact that there is Ein Sof is already gives rise to the inyan of Metzius, at least. Not Metzius as in actual creation, not even Atzilus, and certainly not Ishtalshalus, Bia, but the inyan of Metzius. That's Kedem HaTzimtzum. That's already Hayir. So this is already after, as it were, the Bechir of Atzmos to give rise to the inyan of Hayir. To give rise to the inyan of inyan. To give rise to anything. So this is already, so therefore we're not surprised, although the Maimon will address this, because we still have to understand how there exists such specifics of Chesed and Gevurah Tiferes. We're talking Ein Sof. So how is this kind of Hagbola? That's to be addressed in the course of the Maimon. Akoponim so Ein Sof Amalis Kol HaMetzios. There's no place to anything other than the absolute expression of Hashem's unity, Chas v'Shalom. How is this expressed in these words? Because he says, B'chol hagimul kavin, he says, Echad, ata echad, v'shimcha echad, goy echad ba'aretz. The word echad. While if you should go to my tzimtzum, gimla kavin, ba'achtos, b'skalus. It's all you, it's all one. All of these three Ifanim is all Echad. It's not three Echads, it's one Echad. So this one Echad is the Inyanim of the three Kavim. Yeah, somewhat clear. Again, the mind will explain this further later. So as you can sense and see, it's a very tifah Maimon. We'll do our best. But then when the Givul Kavim are drawn post Tzimtzum, Azahim Bischalkos. So that's where division begins. So the Tefillah outlines the various descending levels of Chagas in greater and greater division. So Tifer as Gedula, which he said Gedula goes on Chesed, Gedula expansiveness, that's the nature of Chesed, and so on. So that next description of Gimel HaKavim Kameshtim Shchol Achar HaTzimtzum. We are post Tzimtzum. Where do these three Kavim exist? The B'chinas HaKeser, this is already Keser, Atik, and Arich. But then there's even a higher Darge that's between Keser and the Tzimtzum, and that is Lamayla Yosef B'chinas Ak. In Adam Kadmon is already there, the Gimel Kavim. Shulim Mayli Mishtal Shalas Adayin, Ak is higher than Ishtal Shalas, which begins with Atzilas, when you Keser. Ve'ena Elo Shekot. So what's the difference between this Lifnei Tzimtzum? What's the difference between Chagas, Lifnei Tzimtzum, and Chagas as it emerges post Tzimtzum in Ak, Adam Kadmon? Adam, the word Adam already implies the whole Gishtel, the entire Gibui, the entire tzir.
Structure.
Yeah, it's a hard word, structure, but yeah, of tzir of spheres. So what's the difference between that, Ak, And lifnei tzimtzum, so he says, the ein ela shekoda tzimtzum haya biskalo so behelem. So lifnei tzimtzum, the chagas is all integrated and non-manifest. Behelem means it's there in simple language, not calling attention to itself. Oh, chesed, good, teferes. Elikus of the shleimus of the shleimus of the spheres. But the ikir is the likus. The ikir is the Eibers expressing himself. So here they already assume a revealed and identifiable state, some degree of independence, meaning that it was independence. It's independence is that they have intrinsic value. In Ak, and certainly if that's in some, the value is just, that's the way God's choosing to reveal himself. Here already, it has a chshivus of some kind. And that continues to become further pronounced down stage Ishtalshalus. So therefore, so here's the Gilui. Where there it's Behelim, Behelim means be skalulus in the market, Lifnei Tzimtzum. You look Lifnei Tzimtzum Eivishter. The kuz has these properties. Here already you're seeing these properties that come from the Eibishter. But the properties themselves have this sense, have a degree of already their own value, as it were. They're virtues, chesed, gvur, teferes, they're wonderful midas. So Malachim Megimel Kavanel and then Balash and the Sin. So this darge post Tzimtzum. The way the tefillah describes it is Nisin Lam Chanasata, to your people you gave. That's how it concludes. Yeah? How does it begin? Someone has a siddur, just read it aloud. The second. Loud Tveres Gedula. So the whole conclusion is La'amcha Nasata. All of this was given La'amcha Nasata. So what's the need of Nasata? Giving means it's going from one possession, one hand to the other, one state to the other. It also implies there's no real change. It's just revealed. That which before he handed it over literally was in the possession of the giver is now by the receiver. There's no really schachus, meaning to say this cheskivut teferes in chagas in lifnei tzimtzum. Hashem's already manifested it there. But here, kiyem gilei helen b'lvad. When you look at Ein Sof, it's behelem. All you see is Ein Sof, and it's only to use like the potential there. It's in a potential state, an embryonic state. And what you're seeing when you look at Ein Sof is Ein Sof, and everything there is behelem, meaning to say biskalulus and bottle b'tzius, just like the Eir in the Shemesh. The Eir is there. All you see is the fiery mass of the Shemesh. So the Eir emerges, it's not something else. It's now the Gilui of the Helim. So then that's the second target, which is post Tzimtzum. Yeah, and so on. This is already Atzilus already. Here is already a world that's defined by these wonderful attributes, these divine attributes. So it's all Esesvidus, but more specifically, of course, we're talking about Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. So in more detail, we're talking the midas, not the midas, not independent, but also bound up with the moichin, but the moichin that is bound up with midas. It's known that the office, of course, are chesed gvur teferes. In other words, in the Ishtalshalus itself, it's already the emergence of Svirus, because the Moichin per se, even of Atzilus, Chachma particularly, and even Bin and Das, is still bound up in state of absolute bittul. As he says in Tanya, the Ein Sof is revealed in Chachma. So we speak about ishtalshalos. It really begins in the midas, and the moichen is the shaykh to the midas. So it's all 10 spheres, but that Goshi is the midas. Midas is really a relationship with the other, bestowal, etc. So he is already embassy chalkos, an emergence of the midas as properties of inherent value. They come from God, but they're wonderful values. In the same midas and Leid himself, the whole value is that it's him. There's no value, intrinsic value in the world of Leid himself, the chesed, the gevurah teferes, other than his desire to express it. So it's all therefore behelim. Now what I'm saying is, it's not the pshat, it's the mechanics of it. Here it's behelim is going to reveal it. It's the truth of what it is. When Sfiris, when the Eibishter is revealing his chesed, gevurah teferes, as it is if they are tzimtzum, it is by nature behelim, b'skalulus in him. It's not that it's this is mechanics. Here's behelim, and they're going to make it to reveal. Behelim, it's virtuously behelim, truthfully behelim, because it's all b'skalulus. It's elikus. And the shleimus of elikus, struct, carries with it all kinds of expressions or non-expressions, and he chose 3. So fine, it's these 3. These 10. Mashenkin, as we go down post-Tzimtzum, by divine design, is already, great, beautiful world, beautiful midas. They're gods, they come from him. That they're impressive in their own right. Because the Kavanas did it b'tachtonim, and the Tachton is impressed with beauty and glory and all these wonderful things. That's the whole Kavan. And the Kavan isn't to know that all of these milas are ayin ve'efes, and they're only milas because they're him. And if it's not him, it's of no value whatsoever. Nothing is. So now the third oifen, the kiven shebchin azu, since on this level of talking atzilus now, ishtalshalus, oilam atzilus, already a welt. So yes, kvar yin hamedidish mitzad establishes bekelim. So here we're talking already a medila kelim mamesh. So kelim means already recipients and hardcore hagbola. Lochin in them, but kan loshen nisina. Here it's not nisina. Nisin implying there's no real change, it's just the emergence. There is a real change here. Fish in Zarach, the fish ein Zaracho in shall nisin rishus l'rishus. It's not simply going from a concealed state to a revealed state, which is really revealing that which is concealed. In other words, he's saying Atzilus is Gilu Yahelem. Because even in Atzilus like Yigur Chara, Atzilus is Mlashon Eitzel, even in Atzilus, not lost on Atzilus is this is you. Not lost in Atzilus is this is you. However, this is the difference. In Atzilus, this is you. And in Sof, you are this, or you are expressed in this. Al derech bitl metzius and bitl layesh, but it's still Gilu Yahelem, meaning to say, the virtue of Gilu Yahelem, that in Atzilus, there is no otherness in the sense that there is in Biyah, Bria. The word Bria implies already creation and others and someone else viewing God. Atzilus is the Eibush expressing himself. It's still that's still what it is. But what? The Sfiras are in a revealed way. So again, there's this catchphrase. This is you. That's Atzilus. And not in Sof, it's you are expressed in this. So here it's not Nesin anymore because it's now already Kalim, Bria. And this is the highest levels of Bria, it seems. Are the 4th thing. Menuchas Ava and the Dova, Shin Gimel Akavim. This is Chagas. So this was the Midas of Bria. But now it's the Gimel Kavim, Koshim Bechinas, and he has it drawn into the Netzach Yisoid even further. Hagabala. That's a chayt yesod, of course, the auxiliary Netzach, you said, is not the goof of the malka or the body of the body of the nefesh, the personality. The personality is in chesed, gvura, tiferes, and their endless proportions and mixes. Netzach Yisoid are called auxiliary, levarim gufa, because they are ways which we carry out the self. You need the staying power, and you need bittul, and you need bonding. But these are all properties by which to express effectively chesed, gvura, tiferes, etc. So that's already far more external. The physical torso is chesed, gvura, tiferes in the lower parts of the body, and that's a chayd yisoid. The nimtza, a person can survive without them. He can't survive without the heart and the body. The nimtza shebenusach zen is a conclusion. So it comes out that in this nusach nechlolim kol hagimel kavin kifi shein b'klolo seidish ayishtalshelu. So lifnei tzimtzum was the first ata echad, and then post tzimtzum. As it is in Kesed, even high in Ak, that's the next statement, and then in Atzilus, and then in Bria, and then in Bria Gufa in Netzach Yisoid. Yeah, we're clear? Maybe we'll make a chart just to refer back to it easily, quickly, visually. The problem with charts is it's aksham, you start thinking in terms of places, but we have no choice. That's our starting point. We have to get the geography straight, and then we can work on, in the words of the Baditchever, and find this lesson in Chassidus Chabad. Pardon? I don't hear you. That's the fourth level. That's Nihi. Yeah. What you're saying that, how do I know Ketushas Levi? Because I got it as a Bar Mitzvah present, the Sefer, which doesn't mean anything. But I was curious, of course, what it says. But I had to say to it because those days a teacher who was not a Lubavitcher, he was I don't know if there's such exists, a Skolaren, this Skolaren is a chassid today. Chassidus is a Rebbe. There's a Skolaren Rebbe today, yeah, I think in Montreal or so. Kalponim, so I used to learn with him, Perlish Chassidus, Kamer Svarim. And one of them was Ketushas Levi. So a little bit, there's a 13-year-old, 14-year-old. Still remember some minyan, but there's a lush I recall there. He brings that the tzrichim lahavshit advarim gashmi yusuf. We have to divest the inyanim, we're talking about the likus, from the gashmias. We have to start with that, with moshel, oiris, and kalim. It's the only language we can use. But the whole haskola, the whole aveda, yigias hamoichin, story yesterday, the Frierdiker Rebbe, as a child, on vacation, the Rabbi is instructing him to think to the point that he's of collapse, and then he should go and collapse on the sofa in his mother's room, in the couch. What's the whole yigia? The geography is not such a big problem. You can map it out and then make arrows and then the circles and the ichleizvos. The yigia is that's pushed in seichel. To understand this as in yonim, and by the grace of God, the nefesh is ruchni, even though it's invested in the guf. So we have these experiences of this, even though we experience like the physical brain, the heart. But we have, that's why God did it. And nefesh, we can understand the way we work, and therefore have some inkling how it is l'mayla. Which is why everything that the Chassidus speaks of, all of the dargis, have to be found within the self. That's our point of origin to understand. Akoponim, let's go for it. Now, the next ois I have to tell you is a very difficult ois. I hope I'm learning pshat right. I didn't hard enough on it. I just read it a few times, and we'll do it together. Anybody has read the pshat, please tell me. Or the right pshat. You recall just, by the way, one of the stories of Reb Shilem, the beloved Mashpia and Lubavitch, died as a very young man. Extraordinary a legendary figure. We told many stories of him, a series, maybe 30 stories from a contest that had come out in his telling stories of him. So he used to sit in Zal and think that sometimes there's motionless for 3 hours straight. Now the point was, if I recall, he can do this in his room. You have to sit in the Zal. First of all, I guess also guys would ask him questions, but who would they ask him while he's so lost in thought? But to demonstrate, because you see a Yid thinking oblivious to surroundings, and he's one that could think of one Indian for 3 hours straight, and you can just see on him the fact that he was oblivious, that the tremendous haravanya and toil, pashit and seich. And then there's davening. The point of davening is to bring that in avodah. He says in Hayom Yom to feel the inyan, to understand them and then sense them. That's davening. Davening is not an intellectual pursuit. Davening is that which I understood and heard before davening in my isboneness and toil and thinking. Point of davening is that which I understood, now the heart should be moved by and start to feel. He says, now Yom Yom, learning Chassidus is a student before the teacher, and davening is a child with the father. He says, Avodah Gedolah, friends. I don't know how shaykh we are, but we're not exempt from it either, that's for sure. I'll call upon him. Yeah, let's begin. They say, Lahavin calls Zebetois Biut, understand? This was an outline. Shtikal has border, but now in greater has border, the Lached and the move in the big kasha. It's not understood. They Shaykha Inyan, the Gimal Akav and Chagas Matzimtzim. How can you have Mamash Akbolas? He started to explain it already, but he's going to explain it in the Maimir. What is the Pshat? Harikut the Matzimtzum or Inyan Achtos Vapshitos. Before the Tzimtzum, it's oneness, the Pshitos, Veich Shaykh Shem Inyan. I said what I said. This Maimir is not in the vacuum. The whole point you learn a new Maimir. I've said this before, it's important to remember. We don't try and answer questions. We try to understand the questions. And we approach the Maimir with completely new openness, ready for a whole new insight that will challenge everything we understood or deepen it radically. Be ready for radical insight. Oh, I know this already. I'm just going to learn something that I know already. That's how we approach it. We'll never get anything if I know it already. Same kasha of the Maimorim 1,000 times. To hear it, that's the first time. First time I heard such a question. It's interesting. I'm just thinking about it as I'm talking to you. I'm procrastinating, but it's getting to this ice because it's a difficult ice. You don't find this in Nigla, this thing. Same kasha over and over again. Kasha, let's move on. It's boring. You heard this already. But in Chassidus, it's over and over again, the same questions. You know why? Because the whole life is one big question. How do I feel independent? It's a perennial question. It's a perennial question. Why do I feel the emes? The emes is Enid Mulvadei. How could it be that I don't feel this? That's the root of all the questions. So the question here is, how is the shaykhs to hear that there should be lifnei atzimtzum mischalkos gimel kavit? So Yuvan Zeb, last line, page Nun Dalet. Okay, here we go. V'hek the Maim bar Eitzchayim. She says in Eitzchayim, this is from the Rabbi Chaim Vital, from the Arizal. He brings in the Ha'ori, it's a deep Ha'ori. Basically, the Rebbe says, see, this Maimer, I don't have all this for him, but this Maimer is basically the Rebbe repeating the Maimer of the Mittler Rebbe and adding things. And then it was published, he said it in Tafshin Chav Beis, was finally published Tafshin Chav Hei. So I would have to see the original Maimer of the Mittler Rebbe. Exactly, I'm not sure exactly what, it's not this. I don't have it, I don't think, no. A kapayim, he says in our order here that we don't find this in h'tschayim anywhere, the next statement. And he says maybe it's not the lashon, but the inyan is there. And then he goes on further. But let's go back to the pnim. So it says h'tschayim being in teva ha'toiv lahetiv. It's a famous quote. It's a deceptively simple quote, and the translation of it is: it's one of the reasons for the bria. Is the famous Maamar Samachvav and Ranat, especially Samachvav, is its classic foundational hemshech. Yom Tov Shloshon Shchol is b'Shabbos Tafshi Samachvav, where he explains that they're bringing the various reasons for the bria, for creation, brought down by the Mekubalim, and concludes and explains that they're all referring to still dargis already of divine expression. None of them really draw on kavanas or atzmos. They're all true after there's already some kind of gilui on some level. Concludes there that Nisav HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that is the atzmizdika. It's a huge foundational maimer, That the Rebbe says in Tanya from the Medrash, this Ave, that is the most primary cause that begins in Atzmus, whereas the other reasons are already, once there already is oir, etc., what's the purpose of the Kavanah? And then this famous Sichos of the Rebbe and Ha'aris and the Likutei Sichos, where he reconciles it all and harmonizes it all. And then adds the Rebbe's great Chiddush, the Kavanah is Neshamas Yisrael. This is a whole, friends, a Torah Shlema, and one of the most deepest and most important subjects, the Kavanah Sabriya. And the various reasons set forth, and what Chassidus says, and the reconciliation of it all. Much has been written on it, not just Maimorim, but in the Ha'aris and so on. Okay, so let's begin here. So he says that it's Chayim, that's the nature of good to do good. Obviously, good is already a gather. Good, it's already a gather. Because it's the nature of good to do good, he says, they arose in Hashem's transcendent will. Poshet means a will for nothing in particular, because there is nothing in particular to want. Everything is all him, or there is nothing there. This is before the Bria. So Allah b'ritzayin they are poshet lahatzil. So Hashem, it arose in His pure will. Lahatzil means to emanate spheres and give rise to atzilus. V'lachin tzimtzum es atzmo, He contracted Himself and expressed Himself in a way of what? Of the spheres, ishtalshalus, etc. Bim bam. That's the statement. And the root of it is because teva tov lahetiv. Let's go further. So since the cause of the tzimtzum is because of desire to bestow good, the nature of good to want to bestow good. This is the cause of the tzimtzum. So this teva exists already lifnat tzimtzum. There's the idea of good, a good God. So there's good, and if there's good, that implies contrasting midas. Because what's toiv? That's chesed. Oh, so we see already, you have to understand it, but fact, we see already from the h'tschayim that this thing of what? Of toiv, of good, lift that tzimtzum. And that's the origin, and therefore he did the tzimtzum, and because he wants to bestow this good upon recipients. All right, we'll read the next few lines. Here's where it gets very difficult, and we'll revisit it tomorrow. And this is reflected also in Medrash that says, famous quote, frequently, In the same way that Neshama fills the body, the Holy blessed be fills the world. The Mashakos of Malis Olam fills the world. This is what the h'tשכ is speaking about. So the Mashakos of h'tשכ, that's the h'tשכ begins the whole process. The beginning is what it says. The Eid itself filled all the place of the vacuum, and then there came the tzimtzum, and then the kav. So what do we see? Even on the level of the Eid itself, this medrash says, he's explaining the medrash. The Eibishter is filling the mokim, filling the world, is analogous to the nefesh, filling the guf. We're using the moshel of the neshama, and the neshama has these midas. The neshama has these midas. So therefore, there's also the same, there's midas l'mayla. Ella, and we'll revisit these two lines tomorrow again. The medrash is not bringing it out, mitzvah to bring out the end of that exists tevel l'mayla, but the statement is just bringing out the relationship, the chayis, that God's invested with penimbius and everything, just like the neshama gives life to every limb of the body. But from h'tשכ, we want to identify the teva property. Talking about the attributes of the nefesh, that there is this inyan of toiv, where already lift that tzimtzum. Okay, outline tomorrow, we'll elaborate tomorrow and address this further.
Why does that necessarily jump to there's covenant?
Because if he's saying chesed, it implies a contrast. And then if it implies a contrast, it implies also a fusion. If you yes implies no. Bestow implies not bestow. Toiv means it could be not toiv. And then there's the harmony. So it already implies these three inyanim of yes, no, and a fusion. L'chura.